Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to how Qatar bought the World Cup by Johnny Harris. The World Cup is starting tomorrow from when I'm recording this, and I think tomorrow from when you're watching this, or maybe if you watch it later. It's already started, but I'm excited, man. And obviously we know this World Cup is one of the most controversial ones. It's probably the most controversial World Cup of all time. A lot of shady stuff's gone on, and I've looked at a lot of videos in the past and a lot more recently actually, because obviously the closer we get to it, all these sort of stories are popping up, and there's a lot of controversies behind it. But yeah, Johnny Harris, I guess, I don't know what his perspective would be in this, because I don't know, I'd never expect this sort of channel like this to go into these sorts of topics. But I say topics, I would understand going into the topics because it's related to the World Cup. I just didn't really expect it. But yeah, we're going to check this out and see just how shady Qatar were and just how shady FIFA are and all this stuff. Some of this stuff I probably already know, but it's an overview of everything that's happened, and I'm probably going to learn more, and I'm going to see more things that are involved in this whole mess of a World Cup. But yeah, we're going to jump into this, hopefully going to enjoy, and let's just jump into the video. So
this is just a game, right? But it's not. It's really not. It's so much more than that.
The maddest thing is, right, the only time I feel like patriotic in any sort of way is when the World Cup happens. I don't care any other time. When the World Cup's on, I'm like, I want to be the best. I want to be everyone. I want to smash the US. I want to smash Iran. I want to smash Wales. I want to win the World Cup and be the GOAT, be the best team. And everyone know that. But other than that, I don't give a shit. So it's weird how it does sort of make me like that. I don't know. How excited are you for the World Cup? I know it's not for everyone, but I mean, it's for a lot of people, but it's not for everyone. It's not everyone's cup of tea. But whoever you are supporting, wherever you're from, what are your expectations and how excited are you for it?
I want to show you a story that feels unique to our time in history. It's a story of how the organization that controls the sport that humans love most was hijacked by a tiny country that controls the resource that humans need most.
Qatar, wealth from oil and natural gas,
resulting in this. A World Cup held in the desert, in a country built off fossil fuels and foreign labor, with a citizen population the size of Honolulu, Hawaii.
That's pretty nuts. Wait, Honolulu, Hawaii's got a massive population. I didn't realize it was that high.
I want to show you how this happened. How Qatar, this tiny country, beat out the US, Australia, Japan, and South Korea by convincing 14 of the 22 most powerful men in football to vote for them to become the host of the 2022 World Cup.
The winner to organize the 2022 FIFA World Cup is Qatar.
Not this crested in my face.
Okay, this is a big story and I'm excited to dive in. But before we do, I need to thank today's sponsor, one of the most unique I've ever been a part of. Thank you, Established Title.
He's getting his bread again. He gets all these, I don't even know what this is, but shout out to him. And shout out to Established Titles, man.
Here we go. We've been deep in this, trying to make a web, trying to make a visual that will help us understand FIFA and why this World Cup is being held where it's being held. I want to show it to you, and I've been really wrestling with how to boil this down, and I think there's just three major things that we need to understand if we want to understand how Qatar bought the World Cup. Check this out. Okay. There's three major things you have to understand to make sense of this story. They are FIFA, you have to understand the World Cup, and you have to understand Qatar. All right, this is our list. If you understand these three things independently, you can put them together to determine what really happened here and how this tiny desert country ended up with the World Cup. So let's start with FIFA. FIFA was started by 7 European nations in 1904. The original goal here was to help organize matches for association football, which is football. It's the thing we all know. It's the game where two teams of 11 players try to kick a ball into a goal. Football was no means invented here at this time at this place. People have been kicking a ball around for like a million years. But it was here in Europe in the early 1900s when the modern authority for football was born, and born in pretty humble beginnings. But FIFA quickly grew into a transnational, quasi-political authority that spans the whole globe. In fact, we have a map for that. So this is FIFA today. It is massive. It represents 211 countries or associations that all belong to this one giant sporting organization. It's the most powerful, easily the most powerful sporting organization in the world. And it's got these 6 major regions or confederations. And it was the leaders from these regional confederations who in 2010 sat on FIFA's executive committee, based here in Zurich, in this bunker-like headquarters. I was actually there just a few weeks ago, actually. I'm in Zurich. This is where the FIFA headquarters, the FIFA museum are. This is where the votes happened.
Please do the ceremony.
Okay, let's get back to this. Here we go. The 24 most powerful men in football, the ones who would go on to decide who would be the host of the 2022 World Cup. Here they are, just hanging out on our diagram, sorted by their confederations. Sepp Blatter, the president, right here at the top, Swiss guy. I'm gonna cross it off. I'm gonna cross it off the list. FIFA, we didn't go over all of it. There's obviously way more to FIFA than what I just talked about. The corruption, the scandals, all of it. But for the purposes of this video, which is trying to answer the question, how did Qatar end up with the World Cup? What we need to know is what we just talked about. The executive committee, the 24 most powerful men in football. I'm gonna cross it off the list. Next on our list, the World Cup. So eventually FIFA got big enough to where they could put on a big international tournament and people would actually come. They held it in Uruguay in 1930. 13 teams participated and they called it the World Cup. It quickly became the most prestigious tournament in football and eventually would become the most viewed sports event on the planet. Beating out even the Olympics if you consider that 1.1 billion people, like a decent chunk of the entire global population, were simultaneously watching in 2018 when France beat Croatia in the World Cup.
Could have been
final
England,
in
man.
Moscow.
Could have been England, but we bowled it because we're shit.
1 billion people at the same time all
That is
watching the same
insane,
thing.
to be honest.
And, I mean, that's insane, but it's also kind of amazing. Like, what other thing brings that many people together? It is an amazing thing what global football has become, and that is basically thanks to FIFA.
Sport has the power to inspire and unite people.
I mean, I'm immediately like actually almost crying. Like this is beautiful stuff. Look at this. Look at this guy. Look at this.
Rooney!
These moments
Come on.
of like amazing like performance, and then the reaction of these crowds.
Oh, when I saw that goal live,
must be
man,
noted.
that was my favorite goal I've ever seen live, bro. It's bringing back memories, man. Back when we were actually good at football. God damn.
That when you have this much attention on one event, 13% of the entire global population watching at one time, it will quickly become less about the beauty of this game and more about, I mean, you know what I'm gonna say, more about money. With so much attention, corporations pay endless money to get their logos anywhere near this stuff. Here, or here, or here. Okay, that's not that surprising. What blows my mind is how far the governments will go to also pay endless money to get anywhere near the World Cup. Not because they make money in return like the corporations. They always end up losing tons of money. But because there's a power in having the entire world focused on your country for a few weeks.
Okay, yeah.
Together, you've given the American people an extraordinary opportunity. to welcome the world to our shores as host of the 2022 FIFA World Cup.
Wait, he said because the US were the favourites for the World Cup in to host the World Cup in 2022, right? I've read about that, but I didn't realise the president of the US at the time was literally announcing it as if it was confirmed. Was it that close, and then Qatar just snatched it out of their hands? Like, what? Man, I just want a World Cup hosted in England, man. I don't know when it will happen. Probably when I'm like 60 years of age. But to have a World Cup in England would be something that I cannot imagine because it's not even a big country. So all the cities would just be mad. After the US, Canada, and Mexico one, the 2030 one isn't announced. I don't think. Is it not? Wait, let me just see. People probably don't care about this, but I've got to see this because if it's not 2030 World Cup host. Don't say it's Saudi Arabia now. After Qatar, we're going to go back to the same region. Surely you should go from like an Asian country or like the Middle East to then obviously the US. You got North America. Then maybe go to Oceania. Go to Australia. You know, or like Australia mixed with like New Zealand or something, even though they're quite far. And then maybe like England or something like that. I mean, I wouldn't complain, but like I don't think that you should go back and then back to like the same. Like it was in Europe and Russia, and then we're now here in the Middle East, North America, and then let's say Oceania, and then back to Europe again. Like I wouldn't be against that, but or maybe Argentina. I don't know if they have the. I mean, Brazil done it, so yeah. I mean, Argentina would be sick, but I doubt it. Wait, I just pressed the screen as if I'm watching a video.
I mean, look at this. Look at this. We plotted this, actually. We found this data. Every 4 years there's a World Cup, and this is how much each of these countries have spent on their World Cup. These are, again,
so let me actually see this. Wait, so
taxpayer money here. This is government money being invested into hosting the World Cup. Throw this sucker onto a bar chart.
Is it? I thought they get awarded the money to spend. Obviously, Qatar, no, because they are just splashing the cash.
We plotted this, actually. We found this data.
So Italy spent 400 million. The USA spent 500 million. France went crazy. Look at Qatar, bro. They don't give a shit. Oh my days.
4 years is a World Cup. And this is how much each of these countries have spent on their World Cup. These are, again, taxpayer money here. This is government money being invested into hosting the World Cup. Throw this sucker onto a bar chart and you get something like this. Like it's getting out of hand. Like every year they spend more and more and more. Oh, and spoiler alert, wait till I show you this graph with Qatar in the mix. Minds will be blown, I can promise you that. The point is that countries are willing to pay more and more to get the World Cup in their country. A moment for them to put their best foot forward on a global stage. This is what we like to call soft power. Okay. I am crossing the World Cup off of our list, not because I covered every angle of it, but because for the purposes of this story, this is what matters. Countries are more and more willing to pay unlimited amounts of money to try to get this event in their country because a billion people are going to watch it and it makes them look good. Okay? We're crossing it off. All right. On to the last piece of our puzzle, Qatar, a country that should be pronounced Qatar, but I'm not going to be that pretentious guy who shows up trying to like say it in the local pronunciation because it makes me sound cultured and cool. I am that guy. I'm trying to not be that guy. So for now, I'm just going to say it like a Texas oilman says it, Qatar.
Quarter.
Okay?
Actually, quarter.
Thanks. I'm going to be really quick on this history of Qatar. Like, we're not going into the full thing, okay? This is a very juicy history that I could easily do a whole video about. I'm going to give you the spark notes, which is that Qatar, for most of its history, was populated by nomadic tribes and fishing villages, whose biggest industry was pearl diving, which is like a pretty gnarly thing to do. Like, you like tie a rock around your ankle and go under to find clams and then open the clams and see if there's pearls. It was like hard work. The British eventually swooped in because the Industrial Revolution was happening and they smelled oil over here. Qatar becomes a British protectorate until 1971 when they became an independent country, an Islamic constitutional monarchy run by one family dynasty. So by the 70s, the British were gone, but crucially, the oil was not. And because of said oil, Qatar quickly transitioned from a poor tribal society to a globally connected energy hub with unlimited money. This accelerated in the 70s when Qatar won the fossil fuel lottery and discovered that they just happened to be sitting on the largest known natural gas field on the planet.
Oh my
This
days.
guy. They share a bit of it with the territorial waters of Iran, but most of it's theirs. Oh, and by the way, all this fossil fuel and the revenue coming from it belongs to this teeny country, which this is a very teeny country. Like, we're talking about a country that fits inside of the sole of the boot of Italy. Look at this. I mean, it doesn't totally fit, it's like, but it's tiny. And we're talking about a few 100,000 Qataris here. This isn't a big population, and yet they're all getting in on this unbelievable amount of wealth. Like, we can't fathom how rich this teeny little thumb-shaped country is. They could not spend their money fast enough. They didn't have enough labor to build all the stuff that they had money for, so they started to import labor from other countries. 95% of the people who live and work here are not Qataris. They're expats from other places, 95%. Meanwhile, the teeny population that are actually Qatari citizens live very good lives. They're some of the richest people on the planet. Most of them work very cushy government jobs that pay really well. They live in a welfare state where their needs are met because there is just unlimited money for everyone in this country. Okay, that's Qatar. So this is the moment where the three pieces of our puzzle come together. Because in the 90s, Qatar starts to read the tea leaves. They start to realize that the world is going to move away from fossil fuels, the one thing that they have. Their gravy train is going to come to an end in a few decades. It's time to prepare for the future, said Qatar, by investing their billions and billions, hundreds of billions of extra dollars into anything and everything that is not fossil fuels. Diversify. So they start to go nuts. Everything from real estate in Singapore and New York City to buying the St. Petersburg airport in Russia to buying Miramax films and the Italian luxury brand Valentino. Like, boy, should I just make an entire
The country's just buying these things. Wait, what the hell?
video on Qatar Investment Authority? Because that would be juicy. In 2017, the BBC noted that Qatar owns more land in the UK than the Queen does. And as a
What land does it own in the UK? What? That's insane. Wait, Qatar own more land in the UK than the Queen. How is that even possible?
part of this big diversifying
just buy it,
strategic
but
investment
still.
effort, Qatar focused on turning their country into a global hub for prestigious international events. You see where I'm going with this? Lucky for them, there is a shortcut to the most prestigious event in the world, the World Cup.
Yeah.
Oh, and this event happens to be run by an organization that speaks a language that they're very familiar with, the language of money and power and influence. And here's where we are. So we're back here to this web, these gatekeepers of international football, the people who voted on who was going to host the 2022 World Cup. 14 of these guys voted Qatar, and I want to know why. Qatar, a country that FIFA itself, when they were evaluating all the bidders for the hosting, decided was not super.
Oh my days. So they didn't even like see it as like as a good option. Like, this is their view on it, and then they still managed to go with it. What the heck?
Suited for this. There's all these parameters that countries should have to be a good host. Qatar didn't really have a lot of them. And in fact, they had the opposite. Super hot weather, no widespread football infrastructure, and perhaps most strikingly, not a huge tradition of football or even a significant local population to spread football to in their place. They have a couple 100,000 people. The World Cup is supposed to bring football to new regions and spread it throughout a country. How are they going to do that in a hot desert oasis with like 300,000 people?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's such a small population. And I'm not saying they can't have it in a country where there's a small population, because that's not really for me to say. But one of the reasons you have a World Cup in a country is to sort of make that country fall in love with the sport. Like the US, I feel like the World Cup, that when it happens there's going to be a massive boom in the interest in the sport. And then obviously countries like Brazil, it's already popular and it was there recently. But yeah, it's just, you have all these countries and then Qatar just sort of is just there. I don't understand. It would have made more sense to have it in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, I'm not saying they should have, but FIFA don't care about that sort of stuff. So it would have made more sense for them if they applied for it. Maybe they didn't, to have it in Saudi Arabia as opposed to Qatar, because there's such a higher population there, and it's just a much bigger country. I always press the wrong buttons, but hey, who am I to say anything?
So let's do this. We're done with our list. Let's move on to the next part of this video, which is probably the part we put the most effort into, and I want you to stick with me here, because the point isn't to go into every single detail of how some of this corruption went down. No one's going to remember every little detail. That's not the point. The point is to give you a sampling of the mechanics of how influence and power works, not just in FIFA, but in the international system generally, how powerful people get what they want. We'll never know for certain because this vote was secret, but we know Qatar got 14 of these guys, and I think I have a pretty good idea of how for most of them.
I mean, I'm just going to assume truckloads of money, no?
We're going to start with this guy. This is Mohammed bin Hammam. He's one of the executive committee members, and he's from Qatar, okay? We can safely assume that he probably voted for his own country.
Yeah.
But more importantly, it was him, a big-wig international football guy, who helped pull the strings on everyone else on this web. Starting with this guy. Jack Warner. He's an executive committee member from Trinidad and Tobago. Leaked emails and bank records obtained by the Sunday Times revealed that before the vote, bin Hammam deposited $450,000 directly into Warner's account, and later even more, totaling $1.6 million.
One question I have, why the hell are you relying on 24 people to decide the stuff? Because it's so easy, they can just all be connected and then they can all just help each other, benefit each other. It's just stupid how they can do this, and nothing's going to be done about it because they have all this power, but I just don't understand how you rely on 24 people to decide all this stuff. It's ridiculous. Like, for any World Cup, how would you have just 24 people to decide this? It just doesn't make sense to me at all.
Just like literally, like he just paid him. Like this is the
Ridiculous,
simplest version. Just like I will pay you money to give to so you do what I want you to. It's just like so straightforward. No wonder, a month after the vote, in an email, Warner called his Qatari colleague bin Hammam, quote, "the only brother I have in football." Okay, one guy down. Who else? Next, we have the 3 executive committee members from the South American Confederation. The U.S. Department of Justice has gotten involved with these guys. They recently released an unsealed indictment against all 3 of them, alleging that these 3 were, quote, offered and received bribes in exchange for their votes. I mean, it's pretty unsatisfying. We don't have the evidence that the DOJ is using for this case, but they're building a case. Oh, and by the way, 2 of these guys just died in like the past couple of years. Next up, we've got these 3 guys from the Africa Confederation. A year before the vote, the African Confederation was having their annual meeting in Angola, which, by the way, was paid for by the Qatar bid team, the people who were like trying to convince people to vote for the World Cup. They paid for the whole thing. Okay, I get it. Trying to like lobby for your team, that's fine. But here's where it gets shady. While they were at this meeting, the Qatar bid team met with these 3 executive committee members. And according to a former employee who was in the room translating, the Qataris offered $1.5 million each to these guys in exchange for their promise that they would vote for Qatar.
I mean, at this point, you can't blame them for not I mean, I don't accept it, but they're getting money that will change their lives. You can't blame them for taking that money in exchange for a vote. It's just, my issue is the fact that why is it just 4 people that you're relying on? FIFA are relying on 4 people from the African, what is it called again? This is the African representative or whatever, or representatives. But like, how are you relying on 4 people from this area, a massive area, to decide where it's going to be? And I know previous World Cups have been corrupted in some sort of sense as well. It's just the fact that you've got these people. There should be a different system to decide this sort of stuff.
A year later, this employee turned whistleblower actually went back on her statement, saying that she actually lied about it and that there were no bribes. Kind of fishy.
Did he get
What's your
bribes?
incentive to lie? But then
I think
the
so.
FBI showed up at her front door and she admitted that she was pressured to say that she had lied about it and that actually the bribes happened. I don't know, man. We don't, like, I side with the whistleblower. You can decide how you feel. And now her life is basically ruined. She said in an interview that, quote,
I will always look over my shoulder for the rest of my life.
Oh, okay, and while we're talking about this, one of those 3 guys that apparently got $1.5 million was later filmed by undercover reporters negotiating an $800,000 bribe in exchange for his vote. Like smoking gun evidence. Same thing happened to this guy, the executive committee member from the Oceania region. And they actually got disqualified from voting. So these 2 guys didn't actually vote. So we're now down to 22 EXCO members. Let's keep going. Okay, so we've gone over the instances where there was direct money given in exchange for the promise to vote. The next phase of the story are more subtle versions of influence. Less overt, less smoking gun-ish. Like this guy from Thailand. He's the executive committee member from Thailand. 4 months before the vote, Thailand and Qatar were renegotiating an energy deal. Thailand was trying to get a better price for their natural gas, something Qatar has a lot of. But for some reason, this guy, a FIFA executive committee voting member, was at the meeting. Wait, what? Why is this football guy in the room while there's these big gas negotiations?
I guarantee none of these people give a shit about this sport. Literally none of them involved give an absolute shit about this sport. They're just there to control things and just get rich. That's literally it.
Negotiations going on. Yes, I'm being coy. We know where this is going. I mean, you gotta read these leaked emails. They're so juicy. You've got a FIFA guy emailing a Qatar gas guy from Qatar Petroleum. They're talking about the development of their 2 football associations from their different countries, and then saying that they're gonna liaise with the CEO of the gas company to follow up about a liquid natural gas sale. I mean, it's just so clear what's going on here. Favorable terms of the deal in exchange for, hey dude, make sure to vote for our country. Oh, and who was this meeting between the gas guy and the FIFA guy arranged by? You guessed it, this guy, Mohammed bin Hammam, the executive committee member from Qatar, who's pulling all these strings. Oh, by the way, just a little side note here. Going through these leaked emails, I couldn't help but notice that the FIFA guy's email was sourpiggy at redacted.
Oh, fair enough.
Sour Piggy's doing a lot of corruption lately. Okay. Okay, and then there's a few just like sort of circumstantial ones that give you a flavor of how this works. Like this guy who sold his family's land to Qatar a year after the vote for 27 million pounds, which was like way over asking price. And this executive committee member whose son was given a job at a private Qatari hospital shortly after the World Cup vote. Both of these guys, of course, like everyone else on this list, denies any connection that this was influence. But now we're at the most significant moment in all of this, the thing that really tipped the scales for the vote. And it has to do with this confederation, the most powerful, the European Confederation. Specifically this guy, Michel Platini.
Yeah, we know this guy is an absolute scumbag who actually was a footballer. So that goes against what I just said. He was a footballer and he was probably the worst out of all of them.
A former French football player turned FIFA guy. He was the president of this confederation, which inevitably meant that he has sway over these other dudes. Just 1 week before the vote, like crunch time, Platini got an invitation that he couldn't refuse. A luncheon with the French president at his palace. Platini later said that before this meeting, he was planning on voting for the US to host the World Cup in 2022. But he goes to this luncheon, and who else is there? No big deal, just these 2 guys, the most powerful dudes in Qatar. One of them the prime minister of Qatar, and the other the current emir of Qatar, from like the old dynasty family. It's important to remember the context here, like what's happening. This is 2010. The world has just been rattled by a global financial meltdown. And the president of France, Sarkozy, is stressed. And he's in the room with the leaders of Qatar who are not nearly in the same financial trouble. See the section before about unlimited amounts of money thanks to fossil fuels. And it's clear that these Qataris want something that the Frenchmen in the room can deliver them. A vote for their country to host the World Cup, something they really want. According to sources close to this meeting, Sarkozy flat out told Platini to vote for Qatar. Why? Well, we'll never know. But it's clear that he wanted a few things from Qatar. In this same meeting, Sarkozy told the Qataris that he wanted Qatar to buy the French football team.
I heard about this, yeah, and this is then why they bought PSG, and now they are the absolute monsters they are. And obviously they bought it as soon as this happened. I guess it was this was the deal, which is insane amounts of money.
Saint-Germain, which happens to be Sarkozy's favorite football team, and at the time was in financial ruin. After this meeting, a few important things happened. Number one, Qatar did end up buying that football team for £60 million, just like Sarkozy wanted.
Cheap.
They turned it around, and soon...
I say cheap. It's not cheap, but in the grand scheme of things, for a football team, that's mental. They're probably worth billions now. 4 or 5 billion probably.
It became a star-studded team with merch that's worn by the world's most popular celebrities. And then we suddenly see an uptick in big trade deals between Qatar and France. Qatar Airways buys 50 giant planes from Airbus, the giant French airplane maker. I mean, if you look at what one of these planes cost in 2010, times it by 50, we're looking at $18 billion, a massive deal. And in the end, Platini in this room, with his president telling him to do what the Qataris want. We need them right now. And it worked. Michel Platini flipped his...
To be fair, I thought his situation was a lot worse in sort of his perspective, but from this sort of what I've seen, I can understand why he'd done it again. A lot of these situations, I can see why these people have changed or like been swayed or been bribed or whatever. I would probably do the same. But again, this is why you shouldn't have these people. You shouldn't have such a small amount of people. You should have a bigger. The way they make it is, they make it in a way that it's just possible for this stuff to happen. Like, I just don't get it. Why they would have it made like this executives or whatever.
Vote from the USA to Qatar.
Also, these poor people that didn't get any bribes, man, they must have felt devastated.
He admitted it later. That's not even speculation. The president of the executive committee, Sepp Blatter, was pissed about this and later said that this was the defining moment for Qatar winning.
They have influenced Michel Platini at that time to vote for Qatar.
Because remember, Platini then went back to his European Confederation with 8 executive committee members, 8 votes, and he almost certainly influenced others to join him. One book I read claims that he took 4 votes with him, but we'll never know. And then, on a cold day in December of 2010, the day of the vote came.
The 2022 FIFA World Cup.
So on that fateful day in the winter of 2010 in Zurich, all the guests arrive because it was voting day.
Clearly, I think we had an absolutely fantastic bid.
Well, we got a great bid, so we just got to go in there and give it everything.
I mean, it wouldn't have helped that you were there giving the bid.
That we've got.
These 22 men cast their votes in multiple rounds until a majority victor emerged. At least 11 of them voted from Qatar since round 1. And finally, 14 votes were delivered to Qatar, a majority and almost double what the USA got. So yeah, that's how it went down. That's how it went down. Like, look, we'll never know exactly what happened. A lot of this stuff we know because it leaked out and we were able to put it all together. But the fact is, every one of these men has been involved in some corruption investigation. I mean, it's no surprise that this stuff happened, and probably so much more. FIFA is corrupt to the core. Qatar didn't make this happen. Qatar just saw an organization that spoke their language, the language of unlimited money. And they used that to get what they wanted, to prepare for the future, to diversify, to get the world to look at them.
It is the biggest event in the world.
So no, this isn't just a game. The reason why all of this matters is because football can be a beautiful thing. No matter what language someone speaks, or their politics, or their god, or whatever, they have this universal language, this game, a global culture full of screaming and cheering and crying and pride and identity. It's ridiculous, yet so beautiful, so uniquely human. And in a very real way, football is a mirror to the world. What's acceptable here in this most revered sport is what's acceptable everywhere. So, by using money and influence to get the bid for the World Cup, Qatar showed us just how power works in our world. They showed us who...
Wait, is he telling everyone else to clap for them winning it or something?
Qatar showed us just how power works in our world. They showed us who really matters and who doesn't, and validated an old idea that the rules of fair play don't really matter if you have enough money. Hey, thanks for watching and for sticking around till the end of the video. This is just the first of 2 videos we made on this topic. The next video publishes soon, and it's kind of the next chapter of the story of what happens after Qatar gets hold of the World Cup and they have to build all this infrastructure. And it's a very long, intense journey that I go on to report that story, and I kind of tell the story of that reporting experience. So that will be out soon. I want to tell you about a couple ways that you can support our journalism here. We do these deep dives.
I guess it's stuff done here, right? Yeah, he's got a Patreon, he's got all this sort of stuff. If you're interested, he deserves it for sure. Give him whatever you can do, pretty much. But yeah, interesting watch. He says it's a part 2, so I guess I'll watch that when it comes out. But damn, this whole World Cup stuff is driving me crazy. But don't... I mean, and the second part of this is probably even worse. I mean, you're going to go into like the workers' rights and all the deaths involved in building the stadiums and stuff, like terrible things going on. And yeah, but we all know it's a mess. I'm still going to enjoy the World Cup. I'm going to be honest. Probably some people won't like it, but you know what? I literally just live and just wait. I say I live for the World Cup. Every 4 years, it's like imagine Christmas as a kid, but it's not just that, because it's every 4 years. Christmas as a kid, it's like winning the lottery with the World Cup for me. Like it's so rare that we get to watch it, but when it happens, you just got to enjoy it. And even with these horrible circumstances, I'm gonna be wary about it, but I'm still gonna watch it and hope England smash it, and we probably won't, but I'll still enjoy it. But yeah, that's his reaction pretty much. And yeah, let me know your thoughts on this and your predictions for the World Cup and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, until next time, like, subscribe, peace.